Yes, I have an item on the agenda that was brought to me by a group of people, Mr. M.C. Davis being the owner of the property, and I would like to ask the board to consider purchasing a 36-acre parcel. It's north of US 98 for the purposes of a sports complex for Walton County. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Davis to come forward and have his team give their presentation, if that pleases the board, and then go from there.
Mr. Chairman, does that meet your approval?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, I'm MC Davis, and I have a lot of ties to Walton County, along with being a homeowner. And before we get into this, and I think there's one thing we're going to all agree on. It's pretty refreshing to see all these young people getting an early start experiencing democracy and seeing how their parents and their parents' leaders work here. So, as y'all know, that I believe strongly in the education of these youth in our county as you do. So that's a bit inspirational. I wished I'd had that opportunity when I was that age. The track has created a lot of interest, as you might think, and there's been a lot of, in this modern technology, there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of misstatements and spin out there. And before I get into this, I'd just like to take a couple of minutes and sort of get some facts and some book and pages and deeds and all that, things that some folks are not very interested in, but I think as a whole we will respect public recordings. This property was bought by, the entire tract was bought by the Florida Community Services in 1996, roughly $350,000. And you guys have a packet giving the book and pages and so forth and so on. They later sold to Forest View, which I ended up being, by accident, the sole member of. They sold a portion of this. They paid $350,000 for all of it. They sold a portion of it for $10.1 million to Forest View. In addition, the part down front, and I'll go up and point to it here. I don't know if is there a pointer? No, okay. Well, there's my pointer. She's going to show you the part that I bought from St. Joe. And by the way, this is Mary Lou Lemon. And I bought that from St. Joe to get highway frontage for $3-point-something million. So a lot of money in it, a lot of permitting. And there's some statements by people who've otherwise been responsible saying that the county gave me the land. And I wish it were true. And there's been some said that the county lost $10 million on it. Well, you know, the county never owned it. Their agency owned it. Y'all empowered Southern Florida Community Florida Community Service. Y'all empowered them to do what they similar entities do all around the country, to give the citizens of South Walton County potable water and to remove the waste for both their personal life and our businesses. So that's what they've done. It's a big deal. They've done a heck of a job. Went from when y'all empowered them, they were about bankrupt, and they're $200 million in assets, of which they made 5% of that off me. So here we are today. Like many, I paid more back then than the land ended up being worth. If any of you guys bought anything about that time, you probably experienced the same thing. And so I'm not here saying any values by law. We all know how it works. I'm here for two things. One, after you hear Mary Lou's presentation, read your packets. If you think legally this qualifies, but procedurally, then I'd like for you to send it back to the TDC. I would also like a vote of interest, because if you guys are not interested, then I'm not interested. I'm a big boy and no problem. But I'm not saying a commitment, I'm just saying a level of interest. So if y'all are not interested, let me know, and I don't have to go through the procedure, won't worry with it. If you are, if you think it qualifies, then I'd be glad to take it to them and see if the TDC has interest. So with that, at the conclusion, we're going to do our level best to answer any questions. Mary Lou.
Well, like MC said, we're proposing a sports and recreation complex on Highway 98. We believe that combining a world-class sports facility with our beautiful beaches should make us the dominating force in the sports tourism market on the Gulf Coast. There's been a huge emphasis on youth travel teams in recent years. Families are taking their kids all over the place to play other children from other places that they don't get to play in the regular season. Families are planning their vacations around these trips. They don't want to pass up on opportunities for their kids to succeed. And this translates into huge economic impacts for the host cities and host counties. Don Shoemaker, who's the executive director of the National Association of Sports Commissions, says that in the United States, parents have spent $7 billion alone just on the traveling involved with youth sports this year. Our current facilities are great, but they're not generating tourism. Helen McCall is too small. It's having trouble meeting our citizens' needs, let alone bringing in tournaments from all over the place. Freeport and Defuniak complexes are not in close proximity to the beach, so they're not a vacation destination as defined by the beach, and they're not bringing in tournaments with folks that are interested in that. Our research shows that coastal sports parks are a recipe for success. Our neighboring counties are hitting it out of the park. Morgan Sports Complex brings in about $6 million annually in direct spending. They just started measuring last year too, so it could be more. And Frank Brown Park in Panama City Beach generates about $48 million in direct spending. This shows that people are already traveling to the Gulf Coast to play in tournaments, and if we were honest, a lot of those folks would rather come here if they had the opportunity. The proposed park location is about 2.2 miles east of Emerald Coast Middle School. It's right on Highway 98, right there on the right with the yellow pin. And the site is close to perfect. It's already cleared. You don't have to cut down a single tree. It's flat. It's over 90% uplands. And it's the most contiguous upland acreage without any impact to wetlands with frontage on Highway 98 that's available in South Walton. The proposed park plan, we are proposing 4 softball fields, 4 multi-use fields for soccer, football, lacrosse, 6 sand volleyball courts, playgrounds, picnic pavilions, a 25,000 square foot regional skate park, which would be designed by Team Payne, which is a world-renowned skate park designer. They would make the skate park not just a feature, but an attraction that people would come to see from all over. We're also proposing a space for a 1.8 acre amphitheater. And the reasoning behind the sports that we selected, behind the features that we selected, is we're wanting to attract a different demographic than that Panama City or Destin does, or other places on the Gulf Coast. Lacrosse is blowing up. It's rising in popularity. It rose 25% in participation just in the last year, and 48% of lacrosse participants have an annual household income of $100,000 or more. These are the kind of people that can travel here and that can spend money while they're here. We also concentrated on shoulder season activities. Lacrosse is played year-round. The skate park can be used year-round. Amphitheater can be used year-round. Softball, year-round. So these are things that will attract tourists at the time we need them the most. And it would also provide needed infrastructure for our citizens as well, as an added bonus, no extra cost. And with that.
Any questions? Mary Lou?
Yes.
Let me say up front that I've played sports ever since I was knee-high to a duck.
Been a while.
That's been a while, that's right. But I also, and I played up to my 50s, but then I couldn't heal as quick. And I enjoy playing sports, and I believe there needs to be an opportunity. But present location of where it's at, there's limited motels and hotels available and fast foods that are available. Now, I have played travel ball. My grandkids are playing right now. And I know whenever I traveled playing ball in South Alabama and Georgia and Florida, that I was looking for a reasonable motel, hotel to stay in because it didn't have a problem. And my concern would be where it's presently located is the lack of those facilities, and what is there, they're going to pay dearly for it overnight. You have a solution.
Our research shows that the families that attend these types of events actually, and this is from research from Frank Brown Park, 80% of those stay in short-term rentals like condos and rental houses rather than hotels. And the way they'll do this is they may put two families in the same house. And a lot of what we're trying to do, we're trying to attract people that are going to vacation here. And I don't know if anybody's driven through Miramar Beach lately, but we actually have plenty of fast food. We've got plenty of hotels. So I'm not saying I don't see a problem here, but it's kind of the growth of where we're going. You know, I looked at the parcels that were surveyed back in 2010, 2011 for the study, and the parcel that they had selected to be the best parcel because it was close to everything, they've already developed an apartment complex and a Walmart there. So we're moving this way. I think that if we build this, then not those types of facilities, but growth will come with it.
Okay, well, there's a significant amount of cost involved in the purchase of the land, plus the development of the park. And if I understand it correctly, you're asking the TDC to come up with that seed money or the purchase price of the property. Plus, we've got to figure out where we're going to get $12 to $14 million to build the park. And then, are we going to create enough revenue off the park or use of the park by using the fast foods or taxes that come in for hotel, motel, whatever, is going to be able to pay back that investment? And if so, how long is it going to take? Is it going to take 20 years, 30 years before you actually see a residual effect?
Well, to start with, we actually had a construction estimate by Royal American, who was the company that did Morgan Sports Complex over in Destin. And they proposed, with all the bells and whistles, top of the line park, everything we wanted, that it would be $8 million. So it's not quite the figure that has been floating around. And we kind of looked at all those prices and tried to figure out what you can do to make that a little bit more affordable. And with different options, like using lime rock instead of concrete, just basic things, ordering the lights wholesale. Different things you can cut it down to as little as $5 to $5.5 million. MC, do you have anything to add?
You're doing great. Commissioner, yes, there's a lot of synergy here. I'm not sure the scope that y'all want to get into tonight, but as you know, your regional utilities is right next door. One of the big expenses that the competitors and people around the country have to incur is the grow-in season, where you've got a mass of gray water next door in excess of what you sell to Camp Creek and to others. There's no doubt with the flatness of this and the ability of your existing equipment, both in your agencies and sub-agencies, I think you guys can do it first class for $5.5 million. We polled some corporations, they don't want to be named tonight because they want to see the direction that this goes, but you have my word, and Mary Lou is in on most of this. These are all names you would recognize. They agreed that they would do some funding, seed money, and also there's some land sharing and some really amazing potential for biking and hiking. Here again, I don't have a liberty because it hadn't been to their board, and we're not at that juncture tonight. And Commissioner Chapman, as far as the residual value and the cash flow, hey, if everything had to have a residual value, there wouldn't be hospitals, and there wouldn't be parks, and there wouldn't be libraries, and you wouldn't have a lot of things that we have already in this county. So, no, I can't stand here and say that, yeah, this is going to make money. I can say that I believe it can certainly cash flow, but it doesn't take new money. And we only polled maybe 7 or 8 businesses that all wanted to participate to some extent. We also had took an informal poll, and we immediately had people that would build the biking and hiking trails and maintain those. So we're pretty excited about it. So,
Ken?
Go ahead, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, a couple things. When I served as commissioner before, from 2004 to 2008, I think I see some of the same people in the room that we worked on this. We We looked for land all over South Walton. We county-owned land that was free, or that we had already owned. We could not find anything that was suitable to build a complex. I mean, there was absolutely nothing, and this was this was during my term. We cannot expand Helen McCall Park. We don't have any other park and recreation for both the local people or for tournaments. And one of the things I think that's changed, and I think this area is changing very rapidly, but one of the things I've seen that's changed since some of these studies were done is, everyone says, well, where are they going to stay? They need to stay in, well, since the recession, about 3,000 to 5,000 houses that people said they would never ever rent have gone on VRBO for rentals. And I live down in the Seagrove area, and my neighborhood is going rental, which was primarily a residential neighborhood. But what's happening is people are going in houses, they're renting houses with 2 or 3 families, and they're coming for all kinds of things, weddings, reunions, and such like that. So as far as rooms to sleep in and places to stay that are competitively priced, I think that you do have those now because of this new phenomenon that people are renting their own houses out and their condominiums out and things like that. And I think if you look at areas, I worked in Central Florida, and if you look at roads like this, if we had only been so smart down there to have grabbed a piece of land that was on a highway that was a little bit outside of the driving range of everyone, soon became a mega center over the next 5 years. This is going to be a mega center. There's a donut hole going in out there. There's a new hotel. There's a new shopping plaza going in out there in the Rosemary 98 corridor. I mean, it is going to happen, and the reason that I'm interested in at least taking a look at this and running some numbers on it is that I know how hard it was to find a piece of property that was even 36 acres is like a gift, I think, because there just was not any land. It was either wetlands, not big enough, or was surrounded by single-family homes, and nobody wanted the lights and all that kind of thing. So I would like to encourage everyone to at least let's consider this land for a sports complex, and maybe do some work on the numbers, get some of the numbers run, and get some analysis on it. So that's what I would like to add to this whole equation.
One thing is the land down front. It is before the school board. I understand they're in desperate need for a high school immediately and a middle school. So I'm letting them lay it out, and I will tell you one of the ways that I'm trying to service this is see what they need. And then as far as the chicken and the egg, which comes first? Do you put the hotel, motel, restaurants, or do you have the attraction first? So the closer it's concomitant, the better it works. So I'm waiting to see if the school board, their needs, I'm going to give them first choice. I'm not here, this doesn't have to be, and I'm a big boy, so, it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere. I have told, as I've told you commissioners on an individual basis, a number of people asked me to come put this before y'all before the developers got it, and I'm not a developer. Y'all gonna have every chance, but people are worried about the front. Well, I'm gonna have some commercial, and we have a map that we don't have the ability to put it on here tonight. It's not a big deal, we'll show it to you later. We have a police substation and an emergency station and a couple of schools laid out. And, so anyway, it might be, if somebody doesn't believe that this is the last, including St. Joe, there are no more uplands that are this size that can handle the sports rec and schools. Okay.
I believe, if I remember correctly, Commissioner Meadows, weren't you on the board with me when someone was looking at putting a McDonald's there at the intersection of for Helen McCall Park? Mr. And there was some discussion.
I don't remember that.
And there was some discussion about, we don't want to see McDonald's and we don't want to see, and I've gotten an email to, we can put regulations in place that fast food restaurants don't have to look like a fast food restaurant. If that's one of the concerns that's been expressed to me. Also, Mr. Jones and I, Larry Jones, drove to Pensacola the other day for a meeting, and we were talking about this issue, and where he sees the next generation of motels and fast food restaurants popping up is along between Highway 20 and the bridge. So, and I don't know, I know that's not TDC revenue, but it certainly is county revenue. I think it's something that and I agree with you, we need to take a look at. Ask the TDC to take a look at it, and maybe get a committee of citizens and all and whatever together to look at it as well. And it popped in my head, I guess Monday, because Shane Supples came to see me about something else. Because Shane does operate that our parks, and he does that one in Hampton Bay. Maybe to have him involved, because he could surely give us some good insight as to what to do right and all. But I see nothing wrong with taking the next step, asking the TDC to look at it, and then maybe putting a citizens committee together to bring us a recommendation.
Maybe assigning it to our special projects coordinator, to Mr. Jones, to kind of put together a blue ribbon committee to run all the details on it and come back to us in a set time period and answer all the questions that we have and that citizens have, and then we could go from there.
Mr. Davis, are you?
Mr. Bagby being on that, working with Mr. Bagby's work.
Oh yeah, I think that's goes without saying.
There's a lot of unanswered questions. It's got all the core softball fields, multi-purpose fields. We need to look at this and make sure this is what the needs are going to be. I don't know how they come.
Right, Chairman. This was just a starting point to lay it out. What, from our research, we thought obviously it's up to the powers to be and whatever the ultimate research and what people TDC wants.
I agree. That's why I said I think also you probably need some workshops where the public can participate.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, when I bought this land, or Forest View bought it, he bought it on the auspices of Commissioner Pridgeon, and Commissioner Mander, and Commissioner Meadows. So those who had the audacity to suggest that I was treated somehow favorably when y'all took my 10-point-something million, I'm glad y'all are still up here. Set the record straight, and I wouldn't mind having it back. No, I'm just kidding.
Mr. Davis, is this time sensitive as far as?
It is. I was fortunate enough to have a large capital gain this year after going through the recession with all of y'all. And so I do need to complete this year. However, if you guys are serious and it's going somewhere, I can have an intermediate closing. So I can, but time is of the essence. But you know, if we're making progress and it looks like it's going somewhere, nothing would suit me better. All you guys know I've been pretty active in this county, and by the way, I finally did something that just pleased everybody, and I just want to announce it to y'all. We're giving Laurie Hood, a good friend of mine, that 80 acres. Even my enemies crossed the parking lot to thank me. And if I'd have known I could have got that kind of recognition, I'd have done it 10 years ago, and I think I'm going to do it every month until I run out of land. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, if this comes to this, and then you know there ends up being a purchase, you would be willing to negotiate on a price, right?
Well, I don't have any choice on the other end. It's whatever the appraisers. Yeah, if I can see what others do, sure. I always have.
Thank you.
You know, I wish I'd have negotiated at the very beginning. But
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hudson?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
Before it comes up here. Just a reminder that there's a county ordinance that deals with the acquisition of land and the standards that need to be met. So, but I certainly endorse what Commissioner Meadows had said about we need to look into it. And I've received emails left and right that Mr. Davis, as you said, there's all kinds of information, misinformation, extrapolation. So I think that it would be important to let him know that we have an interest, but it's got to meet the ordinance for one thing, and number two, to get people together to help bring it. Is this doable or not doable?
sure.
One other person I'd like to add to maybe that committee is maybe someone from the school system, because I'm sure that they would probably be involved in using those fields at some point, even if they didn't build a school there. So maybe, is that a good idea or not?
We could certainly offer the opportunity for them to be involved. Yeah.
I would like to impose just a bit. There's a number of business people that I consulted with on trying to shape this and trying to see would it work, including a couple of restaurateurs that are here tonight to see what would the concessions bring in. Well, on our Earth Day, wow, I couldn't believe it. We had 1,100 people there, 800 children, and there was a 45-minute wait. Now, I wasn't smart enough to have the mobile concession people put $2 a ticket on there for me, but they served so many people, and I understand at Seaside, and these people that are in that business know far better than I, but I consulted with them to see on what these revenue numbers would be. We interviewed the management at all the existing parks, and you hear the naysayers. Most of them are my age, so you can tell they've been there and done that, and sort of tired and wore out like I am. But mostly the Frank Brown is their aquatic center has not worked. Everything else is been a dynamic success, and I'll quote the senior vice president, I won't name him, of our #1 landowner around here, so it won't leave too big a mystery. He said that's the darndest economic driving engine that they have ever possessed. And on this, I asked him what I thought of this, because I was asking for land use favors for our county while I was at it, and he said what's good for South Walton is good for our company. So with that, I'll tell you good night, and I want to thank all these people showing up.
For the record, my name is Bob Hudson, and I wanted to talk just a minute. I want to thank Mr. Davis for what he's trying to do. If you're a resident here south of the Bay, I can assure you of one thing: the demographics of who lives here on a permanent basis is changing, and changing very rapidly. Kids are what I spent my life working for. Worked for the Boy Scouts for 32 years, and I can tell you there's not a Boy Scout camp in the world that makes money. They all lose money. But they're a necessity as you try and teach certain things to young people. What I don't want to happen through this process, because this is being driven as a tourist facility. It's being said it's got to put heads in beds and it's got to break even or whatever it happens to be. And we have a need here in South Walton for fields for kids. And I don't care whether it puts heads in beds or not, frankly. I don't think you should. When I ran the county commissioner, when was it? 6 years ago? Got beat. One of the ideas that I had was an amphitheater and an outdoor place and everything. And hopefully, if we can do something like that, and there's a great demand for cultural arts and things of that nature, I'm concerned that even though it's 36 acres of land, Cindy, that it may not be enough for what we need. Maybe we need two, maybe we need one somewhere down that way or whatever it happens to be. And I would just encourage this board, number one. There were 7 sites that were located in 2011. Well, one of those they said was the primary one, and Mr. Davis, I think, said there was now a apartment complex being built
And a Walmart.
And a Walmart.
At
And
the corner
I
of
will
Hewitt.
assure you, if that was the number one site, and one of the things was it was high and dry, all you have to do is ride by there and see the water standing on that apartment property. So I do understand it's going to be difficult to find some land, and whether this is the right piece of land or not, I don't know. I just want and hope that we can have a vision for the future that it does not necessarily, rather than saying, I want to build a park for kids and adults that live here to play, and if we can have some tournaments, okay, that's fine. I lived in Dothan. Dothan has Westgate Park, and that's a big complex. They have wade pools and all of those other things that are there. And it's built kind of in a residential area. Residents kind of grew around that park. But I can assure you that those games go into the wee hours of the morning with the 8 fields that they have in Dothan, trying to host a big tournament and try and host a tournament here with 4 fields. It is going to be difficult. So what I'm saying is, rather than approaching this thing as a put heads in beds and generate tourism, I don't know about you. If you live down here, we seem to have recovered from the oil spill. Because everywhere I try to go, well, when I say the tourists are here, Sarah, is what I'm saying. And we seem to have a pretty good retention, return rate and things of that nature. So I think what you're doing, taking a look at it, is valid, but I think you also look at it from a little different perspective. And okay, if it doesn't work economically in terms of putting heads in beds, I also heard Brad Pickle talk tonight about the $45 million that he's going to need and how difficult it's going to be to do that. Let me tell you what puts in heads in beds in South Walton. It ain't going to be a park. I'm sorry. It's that beach. And in a few years, he told you tonight, you're going to need $45 million. And everybody looks at that big cash balance and fund balance that the TDC has, but you can suck that sucker dry very quickly. And so please look at this thing from a standpoint of kids and adults that live here, and if we can bring in others. But let's leave our golden egg, as I say, bringing people to this area is truly the Gulf of Mexico and everything. So that's all I'm saying, Mr. Meadows and Mr. Enfield. You know, I look at numbers.
Yeah.
The thing didn't work financially with 6 fields before, but like I said, I don't know whether it needs to be a break even, but corporate sponsors are great for a year or two, I can tell you, but over the long haul, that facility is going to need maintenance and capital expenditures and things of that nature. So as you look at it, I hope you'll look at not just this parcel of land. I'm not saying, I'm not a realtor and I don't know where all the 40 acres are, or 35, or whatever it happens to be, but there were 7 parcels that were identified in 2011. And maybe y'all don't, but have we looked internally at what land the county owns? And
I
have we
did
looked at
I
land
did
that-
when I was in office before. I haven't since then, but the issue with that was there were a lot of wetlands, there were a lot of small tracts. There wasn't anything that was of a size that made any sense. You know, Paget Park literally is, what, how big is that? 10 acres? 10? That literally is about the biggest piece of land that we could come up with that was doable.
Well, obviously, regional utilities own some land somewhere along the line, and so I
And
know
we could certainly-
that maybe we could ask them as well. But I support a sports complex. I don't know that I think it should be tourism driven.
Okay.
I support those things for our youth, and quite frankly, I'm a 67-year-old, be 68 here in just a few days. But I mean, you know, I would like to have a facility where I could do things, because once you start that promotion of that thing as tourist and tournaments and things, guess who takes second place? Guess who comes second in scheduling the use of a field? It's the local people who do that. So that's what I wanted to say is, hopefully we can approach it from what we need, both
Yeah, I think we
locally
could
and...
I think we could look at all options, you know, a hybrid or...
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think the idea is that...
And Mr. Davis bought that land back in
Right.
2007. I think there were 3 bidders on it, something like that, 2 other people.
I don't know, I wish they'd have won.
You wish they'd won. I understand buying high and selling low. Don't get me wrong. I've done that more than one time in my life. So what I'm saying is...
You'd be willing to help run some numbers on this, I would imagine, would you? You'd be willing to help run some numbers on this?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I do good. No.
One of the suggestions that I got was that a half cent, and I like you, I've gotten a zillion of emails, about a half cent from the airlines could maybe come towards this project. Because I understand what he's saying, we need fields for our people, but we need to, you know, identify in our process, how do we fund it? How do we fund the building? And how do we maintain it? Well, let's say we had another recession like we've got to be able for this to be maintained.
Well, you know, let's say it was for locals, what we're thinking about doing on Highway 331 corridor is tax increment financing.
Right.
So you would lay a blanket over a certain area, and all the taxes over and above would go back into that area to pay for, you know, what have you. So, I mean, that may be an option.
Could we do, are you saying theoretically we do that on Highway 98, on that area?
Yeah, it can be
Yeah,
done
it can be done,
anywhere. You have to,
Yeah.
you just, you know, have to set it up and meet all the criteria, but.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question that's a little bit diverted from here. But I believe the prior board at one time gave direction to who then was the county attorney before she became ill, to go to neighbors Giblin, Nickerson, and Tallahassee and get a boilerplate so that legislative findings that were necessary in order to use TDC funds were made. Has it ever been obtained?
Specific ones have.
Are you talking for,
Well, we're talking about whether it's hybrid, whether it's TDC, but I mean, if we're to take prompt action and that would require the board to make a legislative finding in order to make TDC, I recall the previous board had made a direction and Ms. Craig was ill, so but I don't know if the board ever got a response.
We did.
The short answer is, Commissioner, I don't know. I have not seen anything from neighbors Giblin. That doesn't mean
One of
it's not there.
the things I think that happened was we were instructed to ask for specific things. You know, we had to send a letter to the AG and say, is it proper to use it for this and this? And of course, we would have to, if it turned out that way, we'd obviously have to get that from. But there's been one done in Collier County that the AG weighed in on, I think, that said
Yes,
that
there's been several,
that they could use it. So
and that's in the package of the citation, but I appreciate, Commissioner Enfield, what you're saying, and it has to be done. I don't know if it has to be done tonight, just to go back to the TDC, but certainly that is.
So I don't want it to be, if we're going to go forward, I don't want it stalled because we've been waiting and waiting.
Right.
But if somebody could check and see, did we get something back from neighbors, because I thought it was in the term of like, this is a standard format we need to make our finding in.
I've got information back. They didn't give me a boilerplate, but basically what we have to do is amend the ordinance that stipulates what we could use the different pennies for on the bed tax collection, and we have to make the legislative finding through those whereases in that ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Dave Roshkow. I'm a business owner and a fairly new father. I've lived here 28 years, and I've seen Walton County grow, and I meet people every day that are moving here. And the gentleman previously spoke about locals and having an amenity for locals. Well, I don't think we can really make the distinction between locals and tourists, because everybody who comes to and lives in Walton County is going to use the beach, and they're going to use this facility. And I want to speak in support of this facility. I think that when we think about the future, looking forward, this area has gotten a lot of attention, and there are a lot of people buying property now. There's no secret. There's a lot of people moving here. And I think that we're going to see our population grow in leaps and bounds in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. So the fact that we have an opportunity for a large parcel of land that will be very, very valuable 15, 20 years down the road, that may be sucked up and used for some other purpose, I think that this is an opportunity to take, embrace, and enhance our community, so that the people who live here and the people who come here can have an enriching thing for their children and for older folks too. There's going to be some older communities coming, and I'm sure that there'll be some recreation opportunities for those older folks too. Now that I'm sort of in the middle, I'm in support of it all. But anyway, thanks for the opportunity, and I hope you support this.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Flint from Miramar Beach, and I'm a source of some of those numbers that MC described. I provided him my memo earlier, and I got to tell you, they came off of Mr. Pritchard's property appraiser rolls, and the earlier date I didn't know about, but that's where I got the numbers on the purchase. I want to encourage the board to look for opportunities to take care of our local folks, just as Bob Hudson said, and I know that MC wants to do. Use of the tourist development tax is prescribed by law. You just discussed that. And the successful sports complexes that have been described, in particular the Frank Brown Park, is much larger. It has a manager, a management team. On the Bay County TDC, they have an individual with a tremendous background producing sports events. And in the season, it's a 24-hour operation at Frank Brown Park. And the park manager there told me that when that happens, the local use of the park just has to, wait till the season's over. So personally, I would like to see something developed. This may be the best site. In the report that the TDC had done in September 2011, this is the least desirable of the sites for various reasons. And in the report, they also use the whole property, not just the back portion. And Frank Brown Park has 9 ball fields, 4 multi-use fields, the aquatic center that doesn't pay for itself, and it probably never will, plus other amenities there. If you're going to use the tax dollars, you're going to have to go at it aggressively, or someone's going to have to pay. And my objection to the proposal was, in the end, after all the development's done, the building's done, you're going to have a bill to pay. And are you willing to pay that bill through time? Okay, if the TDC is willing to pay that, wonderful. If we want to go without the TDC money, some method to continually take care of the maintenance, as Commissioner Commander mentioned, is going to have to be found. So I would urge you as you look forward to what you do, is to perhaps have another study done with the real numbers by someone who comes in from out of the area and does the deep research to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into. But Don't put it off for that. The people here need the fields, and we've heard it here many, many times from folks in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question of somebody? If Eric gets on bringing up the aquatics, isn't the Boys and Girls Club putting in a pool?
I'm sorry?
Isn't the Boys and Girls Club putting in a pool?
I don't know.
They told me, they said that they
Pools
have.
don't pay.
They
I
told me-
know, but I mean, you
The
know.
Boys and Girls Club has a phase 2, and they did ask what we would like to see there, so we could use it. I suggested a pool, and so it's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, because, you know, I'm almost the same age as Mr. Hudson, but, you know, and aquatics is one of the best recreational for, you know, people of our advanced age and bone structure, you know. So, but I thought the Boys Club was going to put in food.
Speak for yourself.
I said Mr. Hudson, I didn't say you.
Bill is saying he's not going to get, it's not
I would like to address both Mr. Hudson's and Mr. Flint's concerns about the site. And yes, on superficial reading of that report, which is dated in itself, one, it was not, the purpose of it was not for this. It was a very commingled, complicated deal involving gymnasiums and all kind of stuff. The other 6 sites, there was a total of 8 sites. Well, one of them's gone. It has the Walmart and apartments on it. The others, they're not under consideration because if you read the report, they were fraught with wetlands and they had no chance of ever being used. I can tell you, and if somebody can prove me wrong, I'll apologize to you all. If there's another tract of uplands on that 98 out there of this size, then I'm going to be humbled. And I want to tell you something, that there will be developers all over it because I have a half a dozen of them chomping at the bit, so I know that it doesn't exist. And here's one other thing, and then I know everybody's tired, but you know, it doesn't frighten me. I got all kind of confidence in the leadership of Walton County and these young people and this vitality. It doesn't scare me that Bay County's got more ball fields, and that Navarre's doing something, the Gulf Shores is doing it, and Orange. If we listen to this kind of people my age, there wouldn't be anything. We wouldn't even have a Walton County. Who come down here? Did these 68 and 70-year-olds retired? No. This is for young people. We've had our turn. We've used the resources. We've garnered the wealth. We don't need to be tying it up now. It's time to let these people have a say. There's a lot of acreage there. I don't care how much of it you get. But I want to tell you something. The naysayers, they're sophisticated, they're educated. I've researched them. They partake during their formative years all around the world of the finest sports recs facilities known to mankind, i.e. the Air Force, in Loyola, in Houston, in Chicago. What is wrong with the most affluent community on the beach? You telling me we can't compete with Santa Rosa County? Are we going to give up? And how about this? You think you cannot evolve? Everything that quits evolving and reacting to the situation goes extinct. That beach, yes, it's wonderful. The beach just can't be the only out for this county and for these citizens. And we cannot shut off the people, all these people. That's everybody's beach. And everybody serves that beach, and the beach serves everybody. So I'm telling you, we got the leadership, we got the youth, we got the entrepreneurs. Let them work. They'll sort it out.
We need a motion or?
No, are we clear?
Or is it just a
I-
rec?
We're going
Or is it
to
just a?
have,
Yeah, we're going
about
to,
Smith Street, this is a special project.
right, yeah.
Mary Jones will be the
Be spearheading it.
Jim Bagby will be,
We'll be involved.
Bagby will be involved.
And,
Have workshops or
yeah,
whatever they need
yeah.
to get all the data and all the information.
I mean, do we need to do that in form of a motion? So I mean, no, okay. That's just a
It's
direction.
like a direction.
That's a
That's the
direction.
direction. And I think anyone interested
And also
in,
we need to look at,
yeah.
not to interrupt you, but
No,
look at how we want to pay for this, how we going to.
Yeah, I think that would be,
Financing or what.
that would be part and parcel.
Really hard. Are we gonna pay for it and maintain it?
And then each of us will get with Mr.
The
Jones.
ordinances.
Yeah,
Each of us could get with Mr. Jones
I understand that, I understand more. We got to comply with that.
and let him know what we're looking for, and then he could form the committee, and anyone who's interested in providing input, could contact the county.
Mr. Jones.
How does that sound? I think Mr. Jones.
I think he ran.
Yeah.
I think he
stepped
ran
down.
for cover. You're probably right.
But we don't need a motion, but I think is everybody good with that?
Good with that? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
There he is.
Mr. Jones, you got the rest here, sir? Yeah.
Thank you. Very briefly, as you go forward, I really urge you to get a professional study done to make sure the numbers are reliable. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Commissioner Amanda?
No.
Commissioner Hill?
Nothing.
Commissioner Chapman? Nothing. I have nothing. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
My name's Matthew Jones. I'm a resident. I don't feel that it matters how long I've been a resident. This is in regards to the request for the no parking signs on Highland Avenue. Is that request going to be fulfilled as was written?
That request will be processed in accordance with the ordinance that the Board of County Commissioners has passed, how to get no parking areas designated.
Okay. Will they be taking into account the 2011 ruling by Pam Bondi regarding parking regulations?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So at this point, it would be denied.
Well, not entirely sure of that, but yes,
Okay.
I know about Pam Bondi.
One of the other issues is that it seems to be sort of a self-imposed issue of the parking. One of the reasons why is because Highland Avenue by itself is about 16 feet wide. Let's just say 20, just to round up, just in case. The county actually owns 66 feet through there. So if you run that right down the middle, that gives you roughly 46 feet to work with on either side. But as I have here, the residents in that area, despite their vigilance, have not bothered to record or call the police when additional obstructions to the public right-of-way have been installed. And no one wants to take claim for it. I have photographic evidence right here where after Memorial Day it was enhanced, it was increased, but no one knows what happened. And I would like to know when the county will be removing these obstructions from the public right-of-way.
You're talking about, are you talking about the kind of the things that were just put up?
Yes, ma'am.
Put up? Yeah, we're aware of that. That will be part and parcel of the stop sign, no parking assessment. So, we're aware of it. It is in our right-of-way. This has been happening in a lot of different places, so we've got to come up with a policy to deal with all of them.
My biggest concern is the liability for the county. Everybody knows that this county is being sued about 8 ways from Sunday by different entities. And my issue is that these are so close, in order to swerve to avoid a child, pedestrian, bicyclist, animal, or another vehicle, you have to run into this. And because it's on the public right-of-way, that puts the county at fault.
Right. We've asked Public Works to go out and review it and come back and tell us that if it's a safety hazard, or what the different conditions are, and then we deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. So we are aware of that, and we are Public Works is out there looking at it, and we're also working on the no parking. So we'll all kind of come in together.
Okay, because my biggest issue is just removing it and maintaining the county right-of-way that's there. That would clear up a lot of the issues as far as people feeling that they need to park in someone's driveway or anywhere else. I personally have never witnessed this. I use the Stallworth and the Bullard Beach access on quite a regular basis. I have seen cars parked somewhat into the road. This is because the county is not maintaining the right-of-way. That's the main one. I've never actually seen anyone park illegally down there. The most I've ever seen is people parked in the handicap spot at Stallworth, which I have personally called the Sheriff's Department to come out and cite them or remove them, because it is a handicap spot. But as far as many of the other allegations in this packet, it's fiction.
Well, of course, that'll be taken, that, everything will be taken into consideration.
When would this be, like a hearing or committee meeting or anything like that?
Now, we have an ordinance, I'd be glad to get you a copy of that ordinance, that's follow that ordinance.
Okay, but I understand, but I'm asking if there's a meeting or a committee or anything
No,
like that.
it's the staff does the work, they have to require 80% signatures of the people on property on both sides of the road, and if it meets those conditions and it is a safety hazard, then it comes to administration for approval, and that's, once they approve it, then we put up no parking tollway signs.
All it says that I can read in the ordinance is just a safety study. It has to be a safety hazard.
You're welcome to have a copy of the ordinance.
I know
But it's a process we have to go through. I have a traffic engineer that looks at it.
I know Mr. Douglas is looking at it right now when you prepared.
This is much lengthier than the one that's posted on the county website, on the ordinance. On the clerk's website?
We have just begun looking at it, so if you're asking for a lot of details and answers as what we're going to do, we haven't looked at it yet.
Okay. I just want to know how I can be involved in this to prevent what I consider incredibly gross misjustice of public lands basically being given away in a neighborhood turned private.
Give that young man right there your name, telephone number, and email address.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, Ron Romano, Santa Rosa Beach. I've talked to you a few times about it, and I'll talk about it again. I was talking to some people from D.R. Walton, and they're buying every piece of land they get their hands on. I think they're probably talking to MC about that piece. They're currently selling, as of April, they were closing on 40 homes a month in South Walton. In May, they told me they were planning on 60. Starting in June, they were going to be closing on 80 homes a month in South Walton that they were building. I'd be curious if Mr. Demure is here, how many homes are being built in South Walton right now. I know in watercolor, for instance, there are 100 homes under construction. We talked about how we're going to pay for this stuff in South Walton. We have over 2,000 kids now, K through 8 down here. We have one regulation football field with lights on it for 2,000 kids and all the adults and all the adult youth leagues and everything else that play down here. I believe the number is 94% of the ad valorem taxes for this county are paid down here, and people are frustrated. We don't have infrastructure. We don't have basic needs. We're paying all this money, but we don't see it. I mean, if we're fighting, people are literally getting in fistfights over a field. It's crazy. We lost things. You talk about economic benefits. The Seabreeze Jazz Festival, for instance, it moved to Panama City Beach because the venue was too small. Arts Quest has had to move 3 or 4 times because there's no venue to have it. A park like this would work for something like Arts Quest. Horse shows, car shows, you name it, arts festivals, other things for the county for people to use for different impacts. But more importantly, for the children who are here, the school district needs another school already. Their middle school that was going to be so big, and for the next 10 years, they had to add 8 classrooms the first year it was built. So the sheer impacts and the sheer numbers of people moving here that we're seeing are huge. The brand new apartment house that MC referenced, they had a wait list. A wait list right away is full, 250, 300 units. I don't know how many kids are going to be there. But the county's growing, the number of homes, and I think in the next couple of years, the tax revenue, therefore, has no choice but to increase drastically as well. So I would just encourage y'all to really look at this for the future. As far as hotels went, Commissioner Chapman, I know of a couple people that are looking at right now, developers, hotels on 331 south of the bridge, 393 and 98 intersection just changed hands. One of the issues we have with the fast food restaurants is kind of the chicken or the egg, like MC said. As we talk to McDonald's or the different people, they have their logistics they do nationwide. They have their circles, their 1 mile circle, their 5 mile circles. And unfortunately, we don't meet those population-wise. They don't understand our 3 million visitors. They just look at these population centers. But all that is going to change, and you see it as everything's moving this way. So I just encourage you to take the opportunity. Thank you.
To keep kids off the street, you've got to give them some. Oh, Suzanne Harris. To keep kids off the streets and from not doing drugs, you've got to provide our kids somewhere to go. I was on the board of directors of the National High School Coaches Association. We put on wrestling tournaments all over the country, all over the United States. We put on golf tournaments all over the United States. I know where they stay. They stay in the cheapest hotels they can get. They put 6 and 8 to a room because I've traveled with them, believe me. Our high school teams all travel. We put on soccer tournaments everywhere. But I'm going to tell you, this should not be about where they stay and who comes in. We've got enough kids here to use these fields all the time. And my fear is y'all are looking for something to use the bed tax money for, to bring people in here to stay in motels. They're not going to stay in my $4,000 a week condo, and most of us down here rent only by the weeks in the summer. You need to think about our population. Now that apartment complex, a very good friend of mine is building it. It's 55 and over, so I don't think they're going to have many children there. But D.H. Horton has a lot of children. There is nothing for youth in Walton County to do other than hang out at the beach, drink underage, and do drugs. And we've got to keep them off the street. But it cannot be something that we're using because our kids won't have anywhere to go. They won't be able to get the ball fields because we'll be making money bringing all these other teams in. That won't make any money for Walton County. It should not be TDC money. It should not be airline money. That money was sunsetted. That money is, if we need to have that half cent for TDC, we need it for advertising. But we do not, y'all need to think as a community, what do we need for our children and our grandchildren and for the people that come here to live and be a part of this community and work. And we've got to keep the kids off of drugs, off of the street, and the underage drinking's got to stop.
Price Rayner, Santa Rosa Beach. Just for the record, the apartment complex that was referenced, the 250 to 300 units, that is not age restricted. There is another apartment complex that will be north of the Walmart that will be age restricted and is yet to be built. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Diane Culver, former school teacher, and many of you I know. I am here to tell you thank you on behalf of the Beach Highlands neighborhood, and I hope the Beach Highlands First Edition for upping your surveillance and the adherence to the parking laws. We deeply appreciate it because our only concern at this presentation is to thank you for helping us ensure the safety of the residents of both the addition as well as the original Beach Highlands and observing of the parking laws. We appreciate that greatly, and you do have a packet that has a letter from an individual. I would like to comment on the gentleman who just left and the response that there was the only infringements for illegal parking were on the streets partially. A gentleman who left prior to his standing just gave me this note because he's not able to drive. At night he has to get home to some elderly family in Niceville. And he says, I, Mike Radford, owner of lots 1 and 2, Block E, which is the intersection of Bishop and Bullard, 2 lots there on Bishop Street, hereby give Joan Kennett authority to call police for violation of parking on my property. This problem has escalated to where I can't park on my own property. Now, he has 2 empty lots. One of them is being mowed, so whoever it is that illegally parks on it. So it's not just a matter of easement blockage of emergency vehicles. It's a matter of people parking on private property and their tail ends are sticking out in the road. But at any rate, I do want to thank you for the increased surveillance and the cheerful and presence of the police who have come in response to homeowners who truly would like to get people out from under their carports because no one could reach them in case of a fire or a heart attack or no one could reach someone on the beach if there was a drowning or something like that going on when we are on overload. Thank you again. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We're just waiting.
Okay. I was going to give you time. That concludes that portion. We'll start next in the Planning and Development Services.
Everybody leave.
Ready? Mr. Chairman, we have Mr. Chairman, we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. The last item there is a request to continue, and we're asking, the staff's asking this be continued to the 24th meeting. You want to handle that first, or you want to handle it at that time, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, let's go ahead and swear everybody in.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Anyone who anticipates testifying before the board on any quasi-judicial matter that's scheduled tonight, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give before the board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And commissioners, have any of you had any ex parte communication with anyone regarding any item that's on tonight's agenda? And you're turning them in. Does anyone believe any of those ex parte communications would prohibit you from rendering a fair and fair hearing for the quasi-judicial matter?
I have a conflict.
And Mr. Enfield has a conflict with Sandestin, I believe, and he's provided that. And does anyone have any objection to the notice of any of these hearings as published? I hear none, Mr. Chairman. It's all yours.
Mr. Chairman, as I said previously, we have 3 items. The last item there is requesting to be continued until the 24th meeting. You want to handle that one now, or you want to come to that at that time?
I'll make a motion that the meeting on
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us to item number 1.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I have a comment. I don't know whether to do it front or last, but so I'll do it first. What time is it? Okay, it's 6 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
It's 7.
7
o'clock. I had someone mention to me recently that in a lot of these cases, they hire some high-priced lawyers. And those high-priced lawyers, sorry if there are any out there, but I mean, them high-priced lawyers, they're sitting there saying, yeah, they're late. Should we, and it's just a question that I want to pose to us to think about, should we, when it gets 5 o'clock and we have advertised that our planning meeting starts at 5 o'clock, should we adjourn our regular agenda, and do the quasi-judicial things first? Because first of all, they're advertised that way. Second of all, we got a whole bunch of attorneys sitting out there. Or should we continue to do what we're doing?
Commissioner, you certainly can do that. You can stop and take the agenda in any order you wish to.
Yeah.
What I was going to suggest to you is this. When we reorganize in November, I have an idea about separating these hearings from your regular meeting. I know that would involve another meeting a month, but you're right. We have a lot of people who are sitting here getting paid $200, $300, $400 an hour. And if we could give them time certains, that would certainly be better for them. But when we reorganize in November, I have that coming to you as well. So
very good. I don't think it's fair to their clients because they're paying the bill. So thank you.
The only thing is, after that, then the public has to sit here through
Yeah,
that, and then we go back to them, so the public might be here really, really late.
But if he does what he says and we hold a separate meeting, then that'll solve the problem.
And these folks also work during the day, and most of these land use folks. I've got some proposals coming to you for separate days.
All right, I'm doing it.
Mr. Chairman, the first item on our agenda is number 1, amendment to the Sandestin DRI. Renee Bradley has been the project manager. If I could, I'll ask her to come up and give us a brief presentation on this overview real quickly.
Good evening, Renee Bradley for the record. The Howard Group and Carlton Fields are requesting to amend parcel 208-308 within the Sandestin Development Regional Impact to convert its approved 14-story, 225-room hotel located on parcel G at Grand Boulevard Development Order 08-001-0011 to a 250 multifamily residential development apartments within the same building footprint as the approved hotel. As a condition of this approval, the applicant must make this election in writing as to whether it intends to develop as a hotel or a multifamily residential development within 2 years approval of this amendment. If they fail to notify the county as to which option they are proceeding under with the time required, then the property shall be approved only for the hotel development. Regardless of which is chosen, a valid local development order must be in place prior to construction. Staff has reviewed this change. We found that they have met all their notification requirements. The staff's also received a letter from the Department of Economic Opportunity that this is a 38006-19 E2K change, which means they can amend this by amending the development order. It's not a notice of proposed change. It's considered a non-substantial deviation. Additionally, staff requests that Greg Stewart with neighbors Giblin and Nickerson give us an opinion on whether Bay Point was applicable to this development, whether our current comp plan would be applicable, such as the height of the building, and he said that this would not be applicable to this amendment. We also received 2 opposition letters for this project from Tom Becknell and Tom Becknell's attorneys from the declarant of the DRI. He has stated that what they're requesting to do is actually coming from the DRI, from intensity and density in which he owns, and this is not the case. This is density and intensity that's been owned by the Howard Group for quite some time, since 2002. And he's also stated that they need his permission to do this. It's staff's opinion, which agrees with the letter that you should have received from Doug Hall, that the applicant does not need his permission to do this. They solely own these density and intensity rights on parcel 208-308. Staff sees that this meets the statutes of 38006-19 and requests approval of this amendment. And I'll be glad to answer any of your questions for the board.
Yeah, do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a couple questions. Renee, did we ever determine where the missing 46 acres of open space was?
In the DRI, at this point, we're not seeing a total of 46 acres missing from the DRI. We had a determination that the major right-of-ways from DEO could be counted toward their open space, so they're not negative that much acreage anymore.
That much acreage? How much are negative? How much in the?
Not enough to be a substantial deviation.
Do you know how much, though?
Exactly, no, ma'am. We're still working on that through the process of an NOPC that's supposed to be forthcoming.
Okay, so basically it's all one DRI. So
Yes,
how
ma'am.
can you approve one parcel when the complete DRI is not in compliance?
DEO has not found the DRI to be in non-compliance. That's really the only response I have to say.
And from what I understand, your original staff report to the Planning Commission recommended denial. Recommended denial for this particular application.
No, ma'am.
And then the staff report was changed, and it showed up as a minor development before the Board of County Commissioners tonight. So it didn't go to the Planning Commission.
Ma'am, I have not written a report in denial of this project.
So you never wrote a staff report?
To the Planning Commission at all. This didn't go to the Planning Commission. It only came to this board. That's the way we've done E2 changes for the last 6 years.
Okay. So you're saying that it did not go to the Planning Commission, and there was never a staff report in the beginning?
No, ma'am. There was never a staff report in denial of this project.
Okay. Also, too, I guess the way, I've written DRIs and I've gotten DRIs approved, and I've been involved in them over the course of my career. And once you have a DRI, everything is under that umbrella. And if you have one part of the DRI that's out of compliance, then the whole development's out of compliance, and no one can develop something without that entire DRI being in compliance. And from what I understand, these were residential units changed to hotel commercial in, I think, 2008, and it was an NOPC then. So now
No, ma'am, it was not an NOPC then.
Okay,
It was a like-kind transfer at that time.
Okay, so now it's going back to, and that's the other thing that's kind of confusing to me. I've never seen a DRI or anybody come in and say, we want the option to do A or B. So approve both of them, and then in 2 years' time, we'll tell you which one we're going to do. How can you have compliant open space? How can you do that for this particular parcel and not set a precedent for every other change in the DRI?
If I may, this board has not found the Sandestin DRI out of compliance to my knowledge. I have not ever been before this board with an NOPC where we've said that this project was in non-compliance. And it would be up to this board to take that position that the DRI is not in compliance. As staff, all I can do is give you a report to state, this is what we recommend. And at this point in time, all I can do is tell you where we're at with this project. And we are in the process of reviewing the open space. We have found some additional information that we wasn't aware of in the 85 agreement that shows that Sandestin has more open space than what staff originally thought, and some other reports. And even these reports you speak of never came before this board. These were annual report reviews. DEO at this time has not found us as a notice of violation, and we have not found Sandestin is in non-compliance at this time.
What happened at the villas at Burnt Pine? Was that approved by the Planning Commission? The villas at Burnt Pine?
That is a minor development order based on legal opinion, and it is not approved at this time.
Okay. Was it required to do an NOPC?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
The intensity for that parcel is there, and the acreage matches the tables.
Okay, so why was it disapproved by the Planning Commission, or was it?
It didn't go to the Planning Commission. It's a minor development.
Okay. It was great. Okay. Is it less than 20 units?
It's within the DRI, ma'am, and according to legal opinion that we have from Greg Stewart, unless we put out a public notice to change what we've been doing in the past, then we should continue to review the Sandestin projects as minor development.
I got conflicted out of that particular issue, so I see the alternate council.
Yeah, I remember that. I think because we've done something in the past, is not a good reason to keep repeating it.
And the director agreed with you, ma'am, and we went that direction, but we had a legal opinion to overturn that.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had at this time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yeah. Anyone here represent that? You got a question?
Yes. This one now? I'm sorry, you didn't hear me.
Yes, sir.
I understand it correctly. There's some issues, and I think Sandestin takes a position that the density, the residential density that Howard Group would, I guess, gain for putting in this, changing it from hotel to single family is in question. Is that correct? I mean,
multifamily.
Multifamily, I'm
The
sorry.
way I read the opposition letter, sir, it sounded to me that they were saying that they were actually taking intensity from somewhere else in the DRI. That's the way I read those letters. Also, I read them to state that they needed permission from the declarant to do this. This intensity on parcel 208-308 has existed since 2002. They converted commercial to hotel. as a like-kind transfer, which is allowed in the 2002 development order, and I have that tonight if anybody needs to see that. So this intensity was already there. They're taking the same intensity they converted then and converting it again to now be residential apartment buildings.
Okay.
So it's never left the Howard Group's hands since 2002.
I'm reading a document, November 14, 2006, where it refers to the 208 and 308 parcels. And under the agreement 1A, Interwest transfers and assigns 60,000 square feet of commercial residential or retail density to this development. But under B, Interwest also agrees to transfer and assign 500 residential units to be utilized in connection with the development of parcels 208 and 308. So that would tell me that Howard Group already had the density, and it probably didn't come from the rest of Sandesta's density. Is that fair to say?
The way they got the intensity that's actually shown on the development order now was that they took 362 residential units in 2002 as part of a notice of proposed change from the DRI at that time and converted it to commercial. I believe it was 156, it may be 256 if I'm corrected. But basically that's where this commercial intensity came from. It came through an NOPC process legally.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. Darren Taylor. I'm a planner with Carlton Fields, 215 South Monroe Street, representing the Howard Group. I'll make a few brief comments this evening.
Did you say your first name again?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Darren Taylor
Darren.
with Carlton Fields.
She probably hears better than I can. I do, but
No
I just want
problem.
to make sure she gets it.
Absolutely. As Ms. Bradley mentioned, the application before you is to give Howard Group a 2-year option in which to convert an approved hotel building, a live development order right now that we've received from you, into multifamily units. The county, you've already issued that development order for the 225 unit hotel, 14 stories. The amendment would give us the option to convert into 250 multifamily units instead of the hotel. That would be an option, a conversion. We've already provided a traffic analysis to the county to show that the conversion to multifamily would actually create less traffic than the current approval for the hotel. This amendment is considered a minor amendment under the DRI law. It's automatically not a substantial deviation. The Department of Economic Opportunity, the former DCA, they've already provided a letter to you agreeing with that. And the reason for that is because under the law, it said that as long as the change you're making creates less traffic and you're not impacting any environmental lands whatsoever, it's considered a minor substantial deviation, a minor change, not a substantial deviation. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a planner, I'm not an attorney. And from a land use perspective, if you consider Grand Boulevard right now, it's been very successful in attracting retail, office, entertainment with the movie theaters. The real missing component is the residential. And what this would provide is someone could literally live full-time in Grand Boulevard, be able to go to work, have coffee, go to a movie, and never even get in your automobile and never have to go out to US 98. This is exactly the kind of thing that the county's been wanting to pursue in creating mixed-use centers in the county. What we're requesting is an option because, as you know, we had to litigate when the hotel DO was originally issued. We want to make sure we don't do anything to jeopardize that development order until we know we're ready. The 2-year option gives us time to complete our due diligence, make sure the financing and the market is in place. Now, the one item that was mentioned tonight regarding Mr. Becknell, we have had meetings with Mr. Becknell. We do believe that those issues have been resolved. We think the fact that he's not here tonight or his representative, we believe we've resolved those issues, and that's what we've been told. So now we are available to try to answer any questions tonight regarding issues of conversion or other kinds of things. Those are very common changes and all with development orders. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have with that, and we do have other representatives here that can do that as well.
I guess I just have a curiosity question.
I'm sorry, those aren't.
I can leave it to me being female. But if you have a 225 unit hotel. I'm counting rooms. And you convert it to apartments, which then now have probably 2 bedrooms instead of 1 bedroom. How can you get 250 out of that? What do you?
We have Mr. Heiser here, and he can help me out if I miss anything. But when you're talking about a hotel, you're also talking about accessory space and other kinds of things. Once you remove that and you go with a strict multi-family footprint, then you have the ability to have the additional units.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question is, are y'all giving up the commercial square footage and the spa that was approved with the hotel? Are y'all giving that up?
What we have, and once again, I'm trying to make sure if I don't miss anything, but what we have retained is the ability to have first floor retail, and that retains for the multifamily.
Okay, I didn't see that anywhere in any of these documents. I just saw conversion from hotel to multifamily. So, and I saw that you had a spa and you had commercial space and you had a 14-story building. So I guess the question is, is that all you're doing, or what's going to happen with your commercial square footage in your spa area when you if you develop the multifamily?
Well, I guess, and once again, I guess I would look at it 2 different ways. First of all, the DRI itself considers all of parcel 208, 308 as one parcel. And so all of the commercial entitlements that you have for Sandestin for parcel 208, 308 considers all of the commercial as, as one. And as far as we would have to come in with a local development order as far as to establish and get approval for you for the multifamily, and would include whatever commercial square footage would be considered for the site. The change we're talking about tonight is to add the option to have multifamily under the DRI for parcel 208.
Right, and I understand that, but you got 51,000 square feet of commercial approved, or vested, or whatever you've got in your hotel. And so I guess the question is, yeah, there was never, there's no indication in here that you're keeping that or switching it out or trading it, or it's kind of confusing to me as to how you're going to account for that 51,000 square feet of, well, 37 of it is commercial retail / restaurant, and 14,000 square feet is a spa. So is what you're telling me that you're going to have all of that on the first ground floor and all of that, and then you're going to have the multifamily rooms on top? I mean, the multifamily apartments are going to go on top of that? Is that what you're saying? I'm
going to defer to Mr. Heiser on that question. I would say just before you tonight is the issue of the DRI, and the questions you're asking are directly related to the local development order, which would come back before you.
But isn't everything in a DRI, isn't it tallied up according to commercial space, restaurant space, floor area? Isn't everything tallied up in a chart and it's accounted for? So when you move things around, you have to account for everything that you do. So if you can't just you have to express to us that you're keeping that 51,000 square feet of commercial, or you're doing away with it and it's not being transferred somewhere else. I guess that's my question. Is
right, and I think in fairness, and exactly to answer your question on the DRI scale, the commercial, if we're talking about the 51,000 for the hotel, the change that we're talking about is to convert the hotel rooms to multifamily, the option to do that. No commercial square footage other than the hotel is being reduced, and you have to consider the commercial as all of parcel 208, 308 in the DRI. It's not a site-specific, that's the local development order. All the commercial entitlements for parcel 208, 308, other than the hotel units, are remaining the same, and the vote that you would be taking wouldn't have anything to do with reducing commercial entitlements other than the option to convert those hotel units. Am I
Yeah,
answering your question?
I understand what you're saying, and I kind of, you know, I think it's a pretty good argument, but still, knowing what I know about the development business and the DRIs and the development orders and all that kind of thing, I know that you're telling us that you're just converting hotel units to multifamily units, but now we learn that there's 51,000 square feet of commercial and a 4-story parking garage, commercial retail restaurant, that will actually be a part of that footprint as well, whether it's hotel or whether it's multifamily. Is that a true statement?
Thank you. I'm John Heiser with the Howard Group. Commissioner Meadows, basically to explain the way the development will evolve, everything in Grand Boulevard remains at the pedestrian level the same. It's all commercial, just like you see now. So on that platform, which is approved currently under the hotel development order, there is about 37,000 square feet of commercial space on that first level. The rest of everything above the parking garage, which is where the spa was, meeting rooms, conference space. To answer your question a little more specifically, the reason why you have excess space in a hotel is because there's so much back of house, catering kitchens, meeting rooms, spas, all these things that we did have in that original plan now will be converted into support of a multifamily development. But to answer your specific question, the commercial square footage on that platform remains the same, and that doesn't change. You go up 4 levels, 3 or 4 levels for parking. That'll create parking throughout the whole center. And then at that level, and then from there up, is all converted to multifamily units.
Okay. Well, I thought your request was merely to convert hotels to, in the same building pad where you had hotel, you were now going to have 225 apartments. I never understood that there would be ground level commercial. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying that the to me it's a little bit kind of deceptive, I guess. Did you understand that? You understood that? Why wasn't that spelled out in any of these documents that I looked? I never saw that mentioned anywhere, and I think that's an important part of this whole thing, is that the first floor is still going to be commercial. And do they still have, is the traffic still work? Does it still, I mean, that's my question.
It is actually stated in the ordinance that they retain the rights for the original commercial developments that they requested. In the development order for the hotel, there's a spreadsheet that shows a drawdown that actually shows the spa and the 123,000 square feet that's going to be drawn down from the bottom floor. We didn't go into the commercial because in the ordinance it specifically states that that's going to remain on that floor. That's why I didn't go into it in my staff report. My apologies.
I guess I kind of view that as double dipping.
Well, it was existing in the 14-story hotel, and the only thing we're asking to change with the current development order, the local development order, is we're going from 225 hotel units to 250 apartments. Everything else within that development order was to remain the same. The 123, I'm sorry, and I'm saying 123, it's 37,500 and I got glasses on, but 37,572, I believe, is the exact square footage of commercial that's going to be on the first floor. And the option for the spa is also there as well. If they don't choose to do the spa, then we would take those development rights and put them back into parcel 208, 308 at the local level. But because the only thing we're asking to change is residential, commercial, hotel, which was from commercial, went to hotel, now to residential. We're not asking to change the development order in any other manner.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
And Renee, just so I'm clear, the development order you're talking about is one dated June 6, 2008?
That's the local development order.
Okay.
But even the development order for the DRI, we're not requesting any other changes to it other than going from...
Would this one change with this request of June 6, 2008?
No, it will not. They'll have to come in and amend that development order through the local process. And it wouldn't come before this board at this time because we're looking at those as minor development orders. That's the way the hotel was reviewed. So it would be up to staff to make sure that they meet the requirements on that project.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Wait, actually, no more statements from the applicant.
I've got any more statements from that?
Unless you have any questions for us, no, Commissioners. Thank you for your time.
For the record, Alan Osborne. I hope you'll listen to what I have to say tonight instead of who's saying it. But the first problem with this thing is your land development code. This is a change in use. Okay, NOPCs are designed to have a notice of proposed change. You're changing from a hotel to residential, and it's not the same thing. It's one development order, the DRI. I've read that staff package, and it's wrong. The staff says that this is not a notice of proposed change, yet I have the staff's findings, Renee Bradley's dated to your legal department, right here, saying that development order has problems. Your annual report, have you reviewed it? Is it signed off as being correct that you have in your possession? I need to ask the planning department because I don't know. Because she stumbled there and said, we've got an annual report. Guess what? You've had annual reports turned into you since 2007 and none of them have been accurate. And you got sued over it. You're getting sued again. You can't skip the process. It's over 30 units multifamily. Then the Land Development Code said that's a major development. This thing is 1.5 times the size of Edgewater condominium. You don't think that's major? This board, by its own declaration, declares something major on the public's behalf and doesn't need anybody else's approval for it, but they can follow the Land Development Code, and it says so. I brought you these reports, and I depositioned Renee, and one thing, this thing has all kind of pending litigation. I've got copies for all of you. Mr. Dias, in his recent deposition, said he hadn't really looked into the Sandestin issues. Renee, and that right there's a letter from her to your legal department, dated 2009, and look whose name's at the bottom of it, Osborne, because he's addressing the issues that I brought before the board. This is major. Let me talk about DRIs. They would tend to propose, a Howard group would propose, and it's not that I don't say that the Howard group doesn't build some beautiful stuff, they do. But the Howard group would tell you that this is a master plan for 208 and the other parcel. Well, there's only one master plan. There's one development order. It's called the Sandestin DRI. You can't start breaking up small master plans. That's how you got into Driftwood. There's one development order. I will tell you that I have also the appendixes from this development order. It says, and I brought you all, and they're highlighted, brought you all copies of them. It said the Sandestin development order has always been, throughout these changes, the basic plans and objectives have remained the same. Of a unified, high-quality destination resort, the project has always been conceived as a planned unit development. Developmental objectives for a land use mix intended to provide an integrated, internally self-sufficient community have remained unchanged. Well, the integrated community would assume when you put a residential in there that they would have their open space, and you have an incomplete report, unverified, on whether you have the open space or not. You think about that. You'd be approving a development order for 250 families that think they're going to be in the integrated development if they buy in a planned unit development of Sandestin. And I don't even think they're a member of the SOA, which means they don't have access to the bike trail. That means they're outside the gate. They're now not internally sufficient, and they don't meet all the requirements of Coastal Center and the DRI, that everybody given access to the common areas. So you're talking about building, a building 1.5 times the size of Edgewater, and I use that because I can see Edgewater for 15 miles when I'm flying. That's huge. And you're going to call it a minor development. If that's the case, what you can say is this. We had a hearing on the DRI in 1976, and everything else is going to be minor. Because when you can build 250 units and call it minor and have no public hearing, you got a problem. Here's the second reason you shouldn't approve this. Here's an affidavit from Charlie Gauthier. He's the former #2 planner.
Just consideration. Did you hand them a copy?
I don't know if I made any copies.
Well, I'll give them.
They didn't make me copies of their stuff, in all fairness.
I'll give them mine.
So, here's the number 2 guy, former number 2 planner at the state, expert in DRIs for 30-some years. He said that you are substantially deviated. I can pull out Renee's depositions here, and she'll tell you she doesn't know how much open space is left, unless she wants to get up here and say otherwise, since the deposition. If you don't know how much open space is there, you can't confirm that the residential families, look, the Becknells and the Howards are going to have to work this out to where they develop this the way the development order says. One unified master plan. Now, if the affidavit of Charlie is not enough, here's the number 1 guy, also an attorney. I'll bring these up. I want to read you what the affidavit of Steve Seibert. He's a former head of the DCA. And here's what he said. First of all, Renee keeps saying the DEO. The DEO, all they do with the 19E2 change, it's about traffic and open space. Look at the words in E2K, and it'll tell you it's open space. Also drives that. And not a word was mentioned to the DEO because they say in their letter, if Walton County approves it. And the reason they use the terminology if is because of this. Florida law 380.06, paragraph 17 of the Florida statute says, you guys are responsible for local monitoring, not the DEO. You're supposed to tell the DEO when you know of a condition that exists that substantially deviates the development order. They rely on you. Now, I've got the emails and the proof that this county knows that there's substantial deviations there. Now, why don't they act on it and tell the DEO? Because they don't want that enforcement, because it's unpopular. But at this point, you're so deviated from it, and you can't get back to the master plan. But it says under that statute, the local government issuing the development order, that's you guys, is primarily responsible for monitoring the development and enforcing the provisions of the development order. You should approve no amendment until the development order is in compliance, because you have no basis to deviate from. The basis of the standard should be compliance. And then once you've met compliance, then you may continue to develop. I don't wish that somebody who owns this land not be able to develop it. I just wish it to be developed as approved. Local governments are granted the legal authority to adopt the DRI development orders, and you have. You've adopted this by ordinance. And the master plan that you've adopted doesn't include this as a minor development. If it took an NOPC in 2002 and a hearings in 2008 to go from commercial to a hotel, don't you think the same logic would apply that it would take one to go from a change in use? Residential and hotels are not like-kind items. They're defined in your 2002 NOPC, and I said they had one here. That's commercial to commercial, residential to residential. That's the way it's defined. So you have the affidavit here by some attorneys who are well. I have come to the conclusion on chapter paragraph 19 of Mr. Seibert's affidavit to you that a reduction of more than 20 acres, that's all it takes in open space, the Sandestin DRI is in substantial noncompliance with its developmental authorization in Walton County. And Walton County should not issue additional permits or approval until the compliance issues are resolved. He's not saying you can't develop. He's saying that until you get everything back where it belongs, don't approve new things. Now, I've got a letter addressed to you guys from the DCA before they changed to the DEO. Make sure I got enough copies here. And it says in there that Walton County has made a commitment to the DCA, and I assume that transferred to the DEO. I think there's enough there. It says y'all won't approve any more development orders until the NOPC is done and a new map H is adopted. And Mr. Commander, I've got the email from you to Renee saying that you know that there's an NOPC that's required. I know Ms. Meadows knows it's required, so I'm really speaking to Commissioner Chapman and Commissioner Pridgeon.
notice of proposed change. And I live in this development order. If that's the case, then I won't notice that it's changing from commercial to residential. I want to know how those residential people are going to use the amenities that are required for it to be an internally self-integrated community. Are they going to be members of the SOA and pay, or is that going to be another feud? That those people don't have the rights to use the acreage and open space. So you've got your land development code that says you should have a hearing for more than, I believe, 30 multifamily, 20 for single families, I believe. You've got your agreement with the state. You've got annual reports that none of them have been certified. And if you see in that, the reporting of what they call the major right-of-ways, your report also includes minor right-of-ways, and they aren't included in the green space. But don't you really think that if we're having to reach to the point that we're calling the drainage ditches and the ditches in the road green space, that we've reached too far? Isn't it time to tell the DEO that this thing is non-compliance and you want them to come down and put it in compliance? Aren't you tired of having this monkey on your back from Sandestin? Bring it into compliance. Don't approve anything else in Sandestin, just like you disapproved one. And this was scheduled to come before the planning board and got pulled off. And I came in here for another one and sat right at that desk and watched Emerald Coast Associates throw a fit because they couldn't put everything into 19 EK2. It's ridiculous. Just because you did it in the past doesn't make it right. You got a development order, it's out of compliance, you're missing some annual reports, they've not been reconciled, and I know at least two of you know that there's an NOPC done, and I'm here to tell the other two that things aren't right. If it looks bad and smells like everything's not lined up, then it's not. It's not minor to change that much. This is really about ordinance enforcement is what this is about. We got 3 people in the county who enforce ordinances, and that's it. That's it. And I've got a letter here that supports that. It's up to you guys to enforce the land ordinance. And if you don't, just imagine, what about the guy we referred to earlier tonight who built those other 250 units? What about that poor joker who brought his thing all the way through the development process completely, and now in one minor hearing with nobody in the room, we're going to approve another 250 tonight? They didn't go through that process. If it took an entire hearing to decide to build a hotel, doesn't it take a hearing to decide to build 250 places, and we don't know if we're in compliance? We don't know. She just said it. They haven't reviewed the annual report. They just got one. And in fact, I'll tell you how new it is. I have a standing public records request for anything that has to do with the Sandestin DRI, and I don't have it. And I probably got better records than you guys do on the Sandestin DRI. So your staff hadn't reviewed that. And I'll tell you, I've got your staff's depositions and your staff's reports, and I've got emails like this that say something different than what's said in public. But I'm not going to make a big stink of that tonight. What I'm going to say is, hang your hat on your land development code, that it's more than 30. Hang your hat on this as a change, and it should be an NOPC. And hang your hat on knowing that the rest of the development order, that there's not 2 master plans as they referred to. There's only one approved master plan, and it's adopted by 2004-28 as your ordinance. And I'm asking you, if you don't enforce the ordinance, can you tell me who will? Who will? Because that's what it's really come down to in a lot of issues for you guys. You can't look to the Sheriff's Department to enforce ordinances. That's the Board of County Commissioners. It is. I've got the letter right here that says so. I mean, what are your questions of me? I've been to all these hearings. I've been to all the quasi-judicials, and you better read that DEO letter real carefully. It says, if Walton, if Walton. Every time that state agency is asking Walton County for the truth, and I'll put it to you, they ain't give it to them. Not always. It's not been the, I'm sorry, sometimes somebody has an ugly baby. They do. People show you a child and say, this child's beautiful, and in your mind you know it's not. We all think it.
Talking about my grandchildren.
I could be talking about my kids. They ain't the best looking kids in the world, but they mine. But I'm telling you, I'm not full of crap on this. Nobody has spent the hours that I have on this assignment. And all this is money to somebody, but it's not to me. And you know, frankly, if something was going to get built, I'd just assume Keith Howard build it because he builds pretty stuff. But that's irrelevant to what the DRI says. Compliance is compliance, no matter how good a builder you are. And this needs to be worked out between the developers where we have a single master plan. And otherwise, you're going to get sued by each other over and over again by different developers. Because the next person is going to want to build 250 units on a minor development. And you can't hang your hat on that. It doesn't matter what the previous boards did, even if you were a member of it. It's irrelevant. It's who's sitting here right now that controls this change. But there's your letters. So you got your own staff letter saying that something's wrong. You got depositions saying that something's wrong from your staff. You got a letter by the number 2 guy from the state. You need a copy? You want to go over that? The letter to Lynn Hoshihara from Renee Bradley. That was never given to Pat Blackshear when they testified about the DRIs, and I don't know why. But you got, to rehash that, you got the former number 2 guy and the head of all DRI review for Florida, Charlie Gauthier. And you got Steve Seibert. He helped implement those laws to give counties authority under Jeb Bush, and he says it's substantially deviated. Now, if it's in question at all, it deserves to go to a public hearing. You can still approve it. But if it's in question at all and you don't know that it's in compliance, you know it, can prove it, then you shouldn't approve this.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, Renee Bradley for the record. I have reviewed all the annual reports that came in on Sandestin. And yes, there is some questions about open space. I've put that in reports. And DEO, West Florida Regional Planning Council, has had copies of all my reports on those reports. They know exactly everything I've ever seen in the DRI, everything I've doubted about the DRI, and anything I thought was substantial or non-substantial. I've got a letter from West Florida telling Sandestin they need to adhere to our comments. But I don't want the board to think that I'm not looking at these annual reports because I have spent many hours reviewing Sandestin. I've audited Sandestin. I know more about it in Sandestin, I believe, than Mr. Bagnell knows what's in Sandestin. And I can honestly say that I have never hidden anything from the state or this board or the public. And my records are public records, and anybody's welcome to them. That's all I'd like to say.
Ma'am, I never accused her of anything. I just said they're in black and white and say what they say.
Come door. Yes, sir.
Doug Hall with Carlton Fields, representing the Howard Group. I just wanted to very briefly respond to a couple of the comments you just heard. It's important to understand that this is an existing development order that allows the Howard Group to build this hotel. That was granted back in 2008. It was litigated. It's been upheld through the trial process and the appeal process. They can build this hotel. That has been decided and is not appealable or challengeable at this point. All that's before you tonight is a request to amend the DRI-DO to give the Howard Group the option to change the use of the building it has the current legal right to construct from a hotel use to a multifamily use. So you're not changing the physical development that's permitted, you're changing how that building pad would be used. We did meet with the Sandestin attorney because there was a question about whether this was a zero-sum game, that these developments entitlements would be coming from Sandestin's pool. They do not. These are changes. These is essentially a conversion of the existing hotel development entitlements that pertain solely to the Howard Group's property. It will not affect any other property in the DRI at all. Mr. Osborne said you should have a public hearing. That's what we're doing right now. DEO has reviewed this proposal and approved it. The county retained outside land use counsel to review it independently. They looked at it and concluded that it is in compliance with the statutes. Mr. Osborne mentioned an NOPC, the 19E2 process. It's a fairly specialized process, but when you meet the criteria for that provision, which have been met here and DEO has determined that they've been met, you don't need an NOPC. It's spelled out in the statute. This is a special statutory procedure for doing this kind of amendment because it has no impacts, essentially. This will decrease traffic impacts and will not impact any conservation land. So Howard Group has met all the criteria. We're going through the process as we speak. You've got, the state agency has approved it, your outside land use council has vetted it and approved it, and we'd ask that you approve it tonight. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Yeah, quick question. Will these people who live in the multifamily units, will they be a member of the Sandestin clubs and such, or how will that be handled?
I don't know the answer to that. John, do you know the answer to that?
John Heiser again, Howard Group. We are a member of the Sandestin Owners Association. We're not 100% member, but we're a commercial member. It's a different Class B member within it. Right now, what we have are different agreements and have had different agreements over the years for different accesses to common areas, to beaches, cross easements between our property and other properties within Sandestin. At this point in time, we have not gotten far enough into the development to know what we would offer for the apartment owners, whether or not they would get access to other areas within Sandestin.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me?
I have one, and I'm asking for information. I've been conflicted out. I do. When the hotel was originally done, was it done through a minor development process?
It was done through a like-kind transfer back in 2008. That's a process spelled out in the DRI development order that allows for a change from one kind of a use to a similar kind of use. So that is done without a change to the DRI development order by the terms of the order itself. And I think when the local development order that permits the construction of the building to be done, that was done pursuant to a minor development process. It went through essentially the same notification and hearing process. That was part of the claims that were raised in the lawsuit, and those have been decided, and we're done with that.
I'm sorry, are you saying you can't
I've
answer
been
my question?
conflicted out of Sandestin development order
Well, then,
information.
what attorney do I ask a question of?
Mr. Stewart, I believe, is the one who provided.
Is he there?
Mr. Stewart, yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't have him here tonight.
Greg's not here tonight.
It goes back to what he just said. Oh, we don't require an NOPC over here. There's no such thing. If an NOPC, like they just said, it's been in reports and it's all public, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. You can't say, well, I'm over here on this ball field and we didn't see the lightning. You know, you can't do that. If you know an NOPC is required for the development order, then it's required. If your land development code says major development order for more than 30 units, then that's exactly what it says. And he keeps saying, we're only changing it from this to this. Yes. And your land development code says you won't. So I think this thing has to go through the major development process. It's a major development. LDC says so.
I have a question. Do you
Yeah, I do. Well, I have I need some legal questions answered. And gee, I know they're paying you a lot of money, but I have some legal questions that I need answered, and I have no one here tonight to answer those questions.
I should have had Greg.
Because here's a letter from DEO dated January the 11th, and at the very last paragraph it says, therefore, pursuant to subparagraph 380.0, if Walton County approves the change, it will not require the filing of an NOPC. The county must render the amendment development order to the department once it's adopted. So here's a letter saying we don't need an NOPC.
Well, that's an NOPC for this particular matter now. When I say NOPC, you need one for open space because these residential units rely on the fact that the open space is there. And if it's more than 20 acres of missing open space, it's non-compliant. So if you have to read the DEO letter, you have to read what they wrote them. They only asked them about the traffic. And 19E2K has to do with open space too. So if you need an NOPC for anything, that means you need a notice of proposed change. Notice. A minor development tonight I guarantee you most of the people in Sandestin have no clue that 250 apartments and that are going to want access to their bike trails and their beach paths and all that that's required by the development order that you've adopted by ordinance. They're going to want that. And I think you need to make a stand tonight and say, bring the Sandestin DRI into compliance or we're not approving anything else.
Well, I guess I'm addressing the chairman, and I have nobody else to address, because I don't understand it. I'm not asking for anybody in the audience to give me an answer. I don't know what green space has to do with converting hotels to so I really need, and we were just, there again, we have a situation that's before us. We've just been handed this much paperwork, no time to read it. So, I'm uncomfortable.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to kind of clear up some issues regarding the major versus minor development. I believe Mr. Osmond's right. The ordinance does say if it's over 30 multifamily units, it requires a major development. However, the hotel originally was approved as a minor. That was litigated, as was referenced earlier. That question was, historically, as I understand, from the inception of the DRI, all the development orders have been minor inside Sandestin DRI, historically since 1976 is my understanding. When I read the ordinance, I saw that question was posed to neighbors Gibbling about that. And we were legally advised under the theory of equitable estoppel that that has historically been done, and if we want to change that, we need to make that some sort of notice that we're going to change the interpretation of the ordinance. And so, but anything that was in the pipeline that had been submitted would have to be reviewed as a minor development. So this one make that clear about how this is going forward. When I first read the ordinance, I looked at it as we did with Lupin Beach and others. We had historically been doing it certain ways, but that's not what the ordinance said. In this case, we had been legally advised that we need to continue this and then make some sort of notice requirement that we're going to change our opinion, and then we can go under the Land Development Code again. But because of historical methods of review, we couldn't change horses in midstream. Is sort of how I was advised of that.
And you have a legal opinion on that issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is it in here anywhere?
Sure. Is it?
Okay.
We'd be happy to provide it to you if it's from Greg Stewart on that matter as well.
I think what's important is what he just said. You already had X approved and that got litigated. This didn't. Whether it's a residential unit or not, that falls. If it had been litigated, they would just come. If the residential part of it had been litigated, they would come for you like tonight, like your next item agenda, and say, we've litigated it and we came to an agreement, we want you to approve it. What got litigated was whether there was a hotel or not. And just because that particular one held under minor, if you don't change the way you're doing business, you're going to face every change and every lawsuit because you didn't follow your own land development code. Like you said, it says it right in there in black and white. And this particular part has not been litigated. I don't think the Sandestin owners really know what's going on because the major development signs never went up. That's your only shot around here of knowing what's going to happen to your neighborhood. And by not following the Land Development Code for more than 30 units and forcing it through the major planning process, which it has a chance of making it through, following the process, you've stripped everybody of their chance to say yay or nay. Look how many people are standing here tonight, just the ones that know how to read the agenda and pull it up online and read all the packages and stuff. Other than that, the citizens don't know. They're out there with their kids tonight doing stuff with school out. And they don't know that their whole neighborhood's about to change because people in hotels are different. This is one development order, and if it needs an NOPC anywhere in there, then it's substantially deviated right now for open space.
Mr. Chairman, based on the way the ordinance is written for quick initial hearings, I think the applicant would have the opportunity for rebuttal to close. So that's fine.
And I'll be very brief. Doug Hall again with Carlton Fields. I just wanted to address 2 points. One about the NOPC and whether it's required. Commissioner Commander, I know I'm not your lawyer, but the statute that we're proceeding under tonight that I mentioned earlier, 380.6.19E2, specifically says this subsection does not require the filing of a notice of proposed change. It's written into the statute. It sets out a special process for these kind of changes so that you don't have to go through the full-blown state agency review process. So that's what we're doing here. We're having a public hearing. I just confirmed with Renee, we mailed out exactly the same kinds of notice, gave exactly the same kind of notice that you would be required to send for a major development order. Mr. Heiser just told me he's fielded 10 or 15 calls this week. People call in, they find out what's going on, and these are the people that you have here tonight. So this is, I'm sorry? Oh,
I live there and I need
process it. The process requires mailed notice. Your ordinance spells it out. We followed the same process that would have been followed for a major development order, and the people who chose to show up chose to show up.
You can understand.
I'm sorry, the way the ordinance works, the applicant gets the last word. And the commission can certainly ask questions at this point, but nobody else stand up and say anything, because we are in a quasi-judicial hearing, and the applicant gets the last word under the way the ordinance is set up.
Yeah.
Now, the commission can certainly ask questions. Anybody else?
I just had a comment that, you know, there's enough, in my opinion, there's enough questions about this, that when a 14-story, 250-unit apartment complex goes up in the middle of Grand Boulevard, which is going to be visible from the neighborhoods of Sandestin, you know, that's what I'm concerned about. And to me, there's enough confusion in the documents, and there's enough history to say that the overall DRI is not compliant with the open space. That's what I'm hanging my hat on. So that's all I have to say.
A 14-story hotel or multifamily dwelling, what's the difference? It's the same structure just sticking up in the air 150 feet.
But it's like you said, the use of it is totally different. Multifamily apartment, they're living there, you know, they're living there.
Yeah.
Hotel is hotel is a lot different than a multifamily.
I'm not an expert, but it seems to me that a hotel would generate a lot more traffic and stuff, especially if it's got a convention center and that sort of thing, than a resident would. But I'm still not understanding about what the green space has to do with all of this. So, you know,
An original DRI must have an amount of open space that follows throughout the DRI throughout its life, and you can't diminish that open space through various and sundry changes. So the open space is one of the most important elements of a DRI approval, because you're telling people you're going to build 18,000 units, but you're going to give them Central Park, and basically you start whittling away at Central Park, and you know, 20 years later, somebody comes up and says, well, we don't really have the open space that we originally agreed to, but let's go ahead and just kind of move forward with what we've been doing. That's the green space issue.
but they're not changing the footprint, so to me, they're not changing, because they're not changing the footprint. It's going to be the same building, it's just going to be a different use.
I know, it's kind of like they're all one body, though. It's kind of like they're all one body, and when one body is missing something, the other body's missing it. And you can't approve one body without the other body being in
The hotel's already been
compliance.
approved.
Being in compliance. I'm talking about the open space, the missing open space.
I guess, you know, and I'm sorry, but I've got to, I need a legal opinion from somebody.
This is your district. You want to continue?
You know, and I hate to, but, and the lack of.
And again, Commissioners, I apologize. I frankly should have had you here just a minute. I'm sorry.
Well,
I apologize to the applicant. I should have had you here.
Can we make a motion that we continue?
Well, I mean, how do you feel? I mean, if y'all are ready to proceed, I just don't understand what the green space has to do with it. I'm sorry, it's the same footprint. They're doing nothing but making hotel rooms to apartments. They're not changing, you know, the commercial's not changing. It's just a different, you know, you don't have people staying there all the time instead of day after day after day after day. You know, I don't see the huge deviation. I don't see it. You know, I'm sorry. if there's green space involved, I don't get it, I'm sorry. I know you can't say a word, it's killing me, because I don't.
Somebody make a motion, somebody do something.
Two of them, two ladies, continue it, let's just continue this stuff.
Sir?
The next 2 weeks.
Huh?
You certainly can do that, and I can certainly have Mr. Stewart here.
Well, let me just go ahead and let's get top dead center here. I'll make a motion to approve the project.
Guys, from the last second.
Yeah, I make a motion that we continue to the 24th. Can y'all be in Funiac?
I am not in town the week of the 24th. We can figure something out and do what you need to do.
July 9th, is that the next?
I hate to put it off that long, because I know this is, Yeah, you make your office, it can be available on the 24th.
We will figure out something.
Yes, it's my motion that we can, no, our time. I make a motion that we continue it to, what is this, June the 24th at 9 o'clock? Is that what we, or soon thereafter? Which will give me, we've just been given too much information. I want to confer with Mr. Stewart. I'm sorry, but I just need that.
Is that the meeting at the Funiac on
Yes,
that
sir.
morning? So it would be in the Funiac the morning of the 24th?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
24.
24.
We're doing it on Monday.
We moved it to Monday because we're going.
Monday was Monday.
That's my Monday.
We have a second?
Second.
Have a motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries.
What was your vote? Yes?
Mr. Chairman, next item on the agenda is the last one, is dealing with the Driftwood Restaurant. This is the settlement agreement and the site plan modification. Primarily, the main impacts the site plan that was previously approved by this commission is, if you look at terms of the agreement for the settlement agreement, it's the Driftwood Restaurant size is being reduced. And then also the turn lanes, left turn lane and right turn lane are being removed from the site plan. Those are all part of the settlement agreement. Staff has no issues with this agreement whatsoever. It's actually reducing the impacts on the site.
Thank you. Any questions?
What are we doing? Why are we?
I'm tired of speaking.
It was the settlement, remember?
We had to approve the settlement?
That's correct. We had an executive session where we discussed the settlement, but we actually have to approve it as being pursuant to the terms of, not the terms of the agreement.
And the site plan had to be modified pursuant to
Okay.
state law.
Okay, I got you.
And I believe the attorney for this side. We've waited patiently.
Started to hire you for $1, Mr. Dariac,
That'd be a raise. Good evening. My name is David Theriak. I represent the applicant. We're really happy to be here. We were able to reach a settlement agreement with the Avalon Dunes folks. I believe that they also may have some comments tonight. We request that you approve the settlement agreement and the site plan. And I'm here to answer any questions. I figured the less I said tonight, the better.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Anyone here like to speak?
For the record, Alan Osborne. I spoke against this one too, but I think that what they've agreed to by the attorneys brings it into compliance. So I'm appreciative of them working it out and bringing it back to this BCC with a compromise that I think meets more of the intent of the Land Development Code. So thanks.
Anyone else like to speak?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Now we have to have a motion to end the public hearing anyway.
Commissioners, thank you.